Dear sir or madam, thank you very much for the opportunity to give a short video statement on the occasion of the Cybersecurity Conclave Standards and Regulatory Framework in Indian Landscape. I'm Dennis Kipker. I'm professor for IT security law in Bremen, Germany, and in the following minutes I would like to give you a short insight into the current German regulation on cybersecurity, namely the IT-Security Act 2.0 from 2021. And the rules which are concerned with this second IT-Security Act, these are the main security laws of Germany, for example, the so-called BSI Act, the German Telecommunications Act, the Electricity and Gas Supply Act, as well as the Foreign Trade and Payments Ordinance, as well as the 10th book of the Social Code of Germany. And the second IT security law of Germany has a very broad scope of applications. This is to say that we have a special definition of the German Federal Information Security Office, the BSI, and due to this act, the BSI will be given some more independence, and it is said that the performance of the task of this authority will be on the basis of scientific technical knowledge, which is a very important thing here, because cybersecurity is mostly a technical and organizational thing we have to think about. And there's also given a broad definition of IT products which are concerned by this regulation. For example, software, hardware, embedded systems, as well as all individual or in some way interconnected components that process information in an information technology manner. And the BSI law is also regulating in Germany so-called critical infrastructure cybersecurity protection. And this is to say, we already had the first cybersecurity law which came into force in 2015. And with the second cybersecurity law of Germany, we have new critical infrastructures that have been defined here. This concerns the so-called municipal waste disposal, and we will have there possibly about 100 additional operators that are expected by the legislator. And there's also a definition of critical components that we can find here in this law. So that means we have certain critical components in German law which are used in critical infrastructures, and there we have even higher cybersecurity requirements that are given here. And one important thing that has changed based on the second security law of Germany is the regulation and definition of so-called undertakings in the special public interest. And in Germany, we currently know three types of different so-called undertakings in the special public interest. These are so-called companies that have references to the Foreign Trade and Payments Ordinance. These are the largest company in Germany according to value added. We also have a reference for special companies to the major accidents ordinance, for example, chemical companies. And now I would like to have some more insights. I would like to give you some more insights about these three different types of companies in the special public interest in Germany. Not all of them have been defined yet. That is to say, for the first aspect of these companies, we have activities in the areas of weapon, ammunition, armament material, or in the area of products with IT security functions for the processing of classified government information. So this is the first part of these companies in the special public interest, which have to fulfill certain cybersecurity measures prescribed by law. The second possibility here that has been defined are, as I mentioned before, the largest companies in Germany, and they will be possibly specified by an ordinance. So that means a sub-legal decree based on this law. And the most important criterion to identify these companies of the special public interest of the second category is based on this Monopolies Commission report of Germany, and it is to say that in this report 100 of the largest companies in Germany have been defined based on the domestic value added. There's also a new regulation based on that, because suppliers will also additionally be added here. The third part of this special public interest regulation here are companies in areas where hazardous substances are present in quantities that reach or exceed certain thresholds that are defined by law. And with regard to the second category of important entities in Germany, so that means largest company in Germany, it is quite clear that we have, for example, car manufacturers, the three biggest German car manufacturers that will be part of this regulation. So to consider Volkswagen AG, Daimler, as well as BMW of Bavaria. Lastly, it is also important to mention that not only the scope of application has been broadened based on this law, but also the tasks of the Federal Information Security of Germany has been changed. So we have comprehensive control options for the federal government's communication technology. We have our Central Information Security Authority as general reporting office for security information technology. We have collection and processing of logging data, and there's also the BSI's right to obtain inventory data from telecommunication providers, as well as extended warning possibilities of the BSI when the authority is investigating IT security of products or systems that are made available on the market. And they also have the power to pass on data to other authorities, which might be in charge in this case. And there's a relatively long storage period that has been defined by law for locked data to avert threats to federal government's communications technology, as well as descriptions and publication of state-of-the-art and security-related requirements for IT products. And one important possibility that has changed for the BSI based on the second IT security of Germany is the so-called power to hack. So the BSI has the power to make detections of cybersecurity risks for network and IT security and of attack methods through so-called port scans. And these port scans are conducted on the basis of a predetermined so-called whitelist. And this whitelist contains an IP address space that refers only to static addresses. And this whitelist contain, based on that, IP address ranges. And the sources, one might ask where these address ranges come from. So they come from providers. They come from domain name administration address information systems, as well as experience of and notifications to the BSI. And there are also measures for the BSI to conduct fake attacks, with regard to honeypots, sinkholes, and there's also newly given power to the authority for the authorization to issue IT security orders to telecommunication service providers here in Germany. And with regard to critical infrastructures and these important entities, three different important categories of different entities I mentioned at the beginning, there are also changes with regard to the duties in cybersecurity, technical and organizational measures that have to be fulfilled by these entities. So when it comes to critical infrastructure protection, which is already regulated by the first cybersecurity law of Germany, there is a new possibility to order the use of attack detection systems by critical infrastructure operators. And in addition to the existing contact point, which had to be named based on the first cybersecurity law of Germany, there's also an obligation for these critical infrastructure operators to register with a BSI. And that means they have to provide more additional information on their critical infrastructure. And there's also the obligation of these providers to hand over critical data. And of course, when you compare the cybersecurity requirements for critical infrastructure operators in Germany and the so-called special public interest companies, they are in some way lower, but they are still higher than the current level that we faced before the second IT security law of Germany. There's very special regulation that has been very controversially discussed during the legislative procedure. as a change in the BSI law in Germany was the use of so-called critical components and a guarantee statement, which is also considered to be a Lex Huawei. So there's a new obligation to notify critical components which have a steering function in critical infrastructures to the German Federal Ministry of the Interior before the first use. And then the German Ministry of Interior has power to prohibit the use of these components for up to 2 months if public order or security is impaired, or if there are any special indications for third-party control of this company, past detrimental involvement of the manufacturer, or, for example, if this is not coherent with security policy goals of the Federal Republic of Germany. And the maintenance of cybersecurity is also conducted by a so-called guarantee declaration that has to be fulfilled towards critical infrastructure operators, for example, by foreign manufacturers who create these critical components that are being used in critical infrastructures in Germany. Last but not least, I would like to mention one point, which is about consumer cybersecurity. With the second IT security law of Germany, a so-called voluntary IT security label has been created. And here again, the Federal Information Security Office of Germany is in charge. So this label has been introduced as a uniform cybersecurity label to inform consumers about the cybersecurity of products in certain product categories defined by the federal office. But this is not a certification. So this is just consumer information. And this cybersecurity mark consists of 2 different parts. So firstly, an assurance by the manufacturer or service provider that the product meets certain IT security requirements for a specified period of time, which is called the manufacturer's declaration. And the second part of this IT security mark is an information from the BSI on security relevant IT properties of the product. This is the second part of this seal, which is called the security information. And how to define the technical standards for this voluntary IT security label? Quite easy to say. So there is a priority of norms, technical norms and standards, and industry agreed IT security specifications to define these requirements. So in 10 minutes, this was a very short outlook on the new German cybersecurity law and its questions of implementation. Thank you very much for your attention and the possibility to speak here today in India. Thank you very much.